In one of my James Bond videos, I discussed the new overlord, Amazon, and speculated that perhaps it's time for another changing of the guard for watches. I also mentioned that maybe the same should be true for firearm manufacturers. So today, we'll chat about Bond's preferred brands on PCZ TV.
PCZ TV.
You know, it's interesting to note that of all the brands Bond has in the movies, it's only the Walther Company that has remained consistent. I mean, think about it. Vodka, we've had Smirnoff and Stolichnaya and Finlandia and Belvedere and more. And see this video for more detail. Automobiles, we've had Sunbeam, Aston Martin, Toyota BMW. Watches, we've had Rolex, Seiko, Omega, well, just to name a few. And see this video for the discussion. Women, we don't even need to go there, but pistols, it's been essentially true to Walther, especially the movies, and true even with the quasi-official never say never again. Why? Why is that? Now, the books started with the Beretta brand, but in a famous story, Major Boothroyd wrote to Fleming and advised him that his choice of firearms were way off.
My first contact with Ian Fleming was after reading Casino Royale. I enjoyed this immensely. So much so that certain inaccuracies in the book made me write to Fleming and say that I didn't think Bond was going to last very long if he used a 2.5 Beretta pistol, which is a lady's gun and not a very nice lady at that, and used his chamois leather holster.
And see this whole series on the guns of the literary Bond to find out more. As a result of his comments, Fleming partially took Boothroyd's recommendation and equipped Bond with a Walther. So from this point on, Bond was a Walther man.
Ah, so you're a waffle man.
But why? Let's start by first looking at the options in the era that Fleming was writing in. Then, the decision by Fleming on what to adopt, and then how it became a cinematic icon, and finally, what the current environment is and what Bond should be carrying now. Starting with the era of the written books. Well, Fleming was writing in the 50s and early 60s. In that era, you could argue that pistols were divided into three basic categories: personal protection, police and military, and hunting. While personal protection pistols were small, easily concealable, and typically featured small calibers. The police and military pistols were larger with larger calibers, starting at 7.62 millimeters, aka 32 caliber, and going up to 45 caliber. Finally, you had the folks pushing the boundaries of the pistol cartridges like Keith Elmer, who helped develop the .357 and the .44 Magnum.
But Ian, this is a .44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off. You've got to ask yourself one question: do I feel lucky?
In this era, it's no surprise that Fleming initially outfitted Bond with a personal protection pistol. The Beretta is the same size and caliber pistol that the OSS issued during World War II. Befitting a spy, it's easily concealable, and given the short range it might be used, having it in a small caliber was not an issue. After all, he's a spy and not a combat soldier. And Fleming, being the literary writer that he is, loves the description of the skeleton grip and whatnot on the Beretta, which he himself is rumored to have carried in the war. However, Boothroyd famously derided the gun and caliber. He felt that, at least, Bond should carry the Walther PPK and 7.62 or 32, and a Smith & Wesson Centennial in the more powerful 38 Special, and a .357 Magnum with a longer barrel, which would be stored in his car. So, what would Fleming choose? Well, Fleming felt that the automatic was easier to conceal. So from then on, it was the Walther, almost exclusively. Some other influencing factors for Fleming might be that at the time, European police carried automatics, while American police carried revolvers. I'm going to guess that Fleming, leaning on the Euro influence, also decided on the automatic to help differentiate Bond from the typical American detective and their detective special revolvers. Let's face it, the automatics are sleek and sexy, as opposed to the big rounded revolvers typical of the American police. On a side note, I did postulate that Bond carried a big American .45 automatic in The Spy Who Loved Me. See this video here. Now we'll switch to the silver screen. Cinematically, one of the key moments in Doctor Who is when M brings Q in to replace Bond's pistol. This is more than just an equipment change. It's a moment on screen which helped establish both M, Bond, and Q's personality. M is clearly in charge. Bond is contrite, stubborn, and tries to sneak his Beretta back. And Q establishes his bona fides.
Yes, I thought so. This damn Beretta again. I've told you about this before. You tell him. For the last time.
It's nice and light. In a lady's handbag. No stopping power.
Any comment, 007?
I disagree, sir. I've used the Beretta for 10 years. I've never missed with a jet.
Yeah, maybe not. But it jammed on your last job, and you spent 6 months in hospital in consequence. If you carry a 00 number, it means you're licensed to kill, not get killed.
This scene essentially establishes the brand Walther as another character.
You'll carry the Walther.
It replaces Bond's first love, his Beretta, with a new product for his affection.
Then from now on, you carry a different gun. Show him, Amra.
Walther PPK. 7.65 mil with a delivery like a brick through a plate glass window. Takes a Brausch silencer with very little reduction in muzzle velocity. The American CIA swear by them.
Thank you, Major Boothroyd.
He's a secret agent and depends on this pistol for his life. Perhaps metaphorically, the pistol is a substitute for a wife. Well, maybe too deep thoughts here, but Walther became a familiar touchstone for the audience and an easy way for the writers to ensure continuity of the Bond character, despite changing automobiles or vodka or watch brands or actors. Because I certainly doubt that Walther has the marketing budget to pay for product placement. So the Walther brand became a trope. Now, let's turn and consider the current firearms environment. The PPK is a product of the 1930s. Think on that. Does Bond still drive a 1930s car? Have there been no advances in car technology since then? Or firearms technology since then. Walther themselves have gone through how many iterations of new and modern and compact pistols since the PPK, and yet the PPK for Bond has outlasted all these models. Honestly, the PPK is at best obsolescent. And this is from someone who owns, 3 or more? So for the same reason Bond really shouldn't be driving a 1960s Aston Martin DB5, Bond really should not be carting around a piece of firearms technology that's almost 100 years old. Let's be honest, this is just fan service.
I cast you out! Unclean spirit! Shut up, your ass! In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ!
Sacrilege, I know. But now we have our new alien overlords. In my watch video, I argue that this is a perfect time to create a distinct change for the new Bond and to move on to the new watch brand. Likewise, in the current environment, let's now channel Boothroyd through a modern lens. And what would Gun Jesus, or you, pick for a new Bond? Well, here's my take. Let's start with caliber. The police and military now carry at least 9mm. It's ubiquitous and readily available globally. Also, anything larger requires a larger firearm, so that eliminates a bunch of options, as I would argue he needs at least a 9mm. And ironically, modern design has allowed 9mm pistols to be scaled down smaller than the 32 PPKs of old, with more ammunition of a more powerful round. So I'm guessing that Bond will be carrying the smaller 9mm subcompact pistols now in the marketplace. And as a spy, he doesn't need the extra bolt of a red dot sight. And in this category, there are a plethora of choices available. Let's look at some of the brands and the imagery. Now, unfortunately, the Walther brand is no longer the gold standard in the marketplace. In the US, the SIG and the Beretta have long been established as the firearms of choice with the military. And in the British military, the Glock is a current sidearm, with the SAS opting for the SIG. So I would argue, given Bond as a commander in the military, the choices are SIG, Beretta, or Glock. Let's start with the Beretta. If we were so inclined to keep the equivalent of the 418 that Fleming initially equipped Bond with, I'd say the Tomcat in 32 would be the answer. It's a larger caliber, 32 versus 25, but the same relative size, but with greater reliability. But I did say no to 32 caliber, so true, there are more capable, albeit larger, variants. For the Beretta, the APX-A1 model makes more sense because it's a 9mm. If it's the Glock, then we're moving to a G26 subcompact. If it's the SIG, then it would be the 365. And this pistol really brought small, concealable pistols into the modern age with a major caliber, high-capacity pistol in a small size. So, here's the discussion. For Berettas, the APX is a logical choice, as I mentioned, because of the 9mm caliber, but it's ugly. The Tomcat is a better-looking design, and frankly, it's the descendant of the original 418. It's kind of cool homage to Fleming. Yes, I know it's not logical. Now let's look at the Glock. Wow. If the Sentinel was homely, then the Glock is shaped like a brick. Not sexy at all. Plus, the Glock is the de facto pistol of the American police, and it's something that I'm guessing Fleming would avoid in order to preserve the more Europeanish aspect of Bond. The SIG, well, it's got the SAS Special Forces halo. It's a German-Swiss company, and his watch is Swiss. And the intangible design aesthetic, well, let's face it, it's pretty darn sexy. If I were to rank them, SIG, modern Swiss-German technology and styling. Beretta, retro choice, the modern equivalent of the 418. Glock, capable, reliable, but it's ugly. And let's face it, boring.
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
Well, all right. There you go. Another argument for brand change for the new Amazon overlords. But what do you think? Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And now, most importantly, my disclaimers.
Bye.